The Howl of Wolfe County, Kentucky. A Trooper's Vow to Kill, Chapter 1. Fresh blood in old grounds, the wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it secrets only the old pines of Wolfe County, Kentucky, knew. The road that stretched ahead of Jake felt as old and worn as the tales he'd heard growing up. The darkness seemed almost sentient, waiting, watching. A sudden burst from the police radio shattered the silence, startling Jake. The voice of the dispatcher echoed, metallic and distant. "State Trooper Jake, please confirm you're en route to Maple Street. We've got a situation." The LED readout on his dashboard blinked 10:47 p.m. He picked up the receiver, confirmed. "What's the situation?" "Unconfirmed reports, Jake. Some say it's an animal attack, others claim it's worse. We need you on the scene." The night was unusually dark, the sky painted with thick clouds, hiding the moon's comforting glow. The lonely stretch of road was lit only by the headlights of Jake's patrol car, casting long shadows on the path. His car finally rolled into the edge of town, and the scene on Maple Street was nothing short of chaotic. People stood in their nightclothes, whispering among themselves, eyes wide with a mix of fear and curiosity. Police tape marked the perimeter of one of the older houses. Its porch light flickered ominously, painting an eerie picture. As Jake stepped out, he caught sight of a familiar face. Officer Daniels, a seasoned policeman with more gray in his hair than black, beckoned him over. Jake felt a knot of dread in his stomach. "Hell of a first day, huh, rookie?" Daniel's voice held a tremor, an undertone of unease. Jake's eyes adjusted to the gloom as he approached the porch. The door was ajar, revealing a room in disarray. Blood splatters painted a macabre scene. At the center lay a body, torn and ravaged, unrecognizable. The scent of blood was overpowering. "Jesus," Jake whispered, memories from his tours overseas flooding back, battlefields, fallen comrades, the relentless brutality of war. This was a different kind of war, but the casualties looked hauntingly similar. "Looks like an animal attack, doesn't it?" Daniel spoke softly, eyes never leaving the gruesome scene. "But this isn't just any animal. I've seen bear attacks, cougar attacks, but this is something else." Jake's mind raced. He remembered whispered tales around campfires, stories of a creature that lurked in the shadows. The Wolf Man. But legends were just that, stories, tales to frighten children. Yet, as he stood there, the reality of the situation seemed to blur the lines. A soft murmuring caught Jake's attention. A small group of locals huddled together. One, an older woman with wild gray hair and piercing blue eyes, caught Jake's gaze. Her lips moved, but what she whispered was drowned by the wind. Yet, her message was clear: beware. Daniels cleared his throat. "These folks have been talking. They say they heard howls, not the usual coyotes or wolves, but something deeper, more human." Jake frowned. "We're taking this seriously?" Daniels looked at him. "In Wolfe County, legends have a way of becoming reality. And some legends? They're best left untouched." A cold gust of wind made the trees whisper once again. Jake felt a shiver down his spine. As he surveyed the scene, his military instincts kicked in. There was an enemy out there, one that had claimed countless lives. It needed to be stopped. As he walked back to his car, the old stories he'd heard seemed more real than ever. The night seemed to be alive with whispers, shadows that moved just beyond sight, and an overwhelming feeling that he was being watched. He took a deep breath. "I will kill it," he vowed. The wind seemed to carry his promise, echoing it back mockingly. The hunt had begun, but who was the hunter and who was the prey remained to be seen. And as dawn approached, the first rays of light revealed an ominous sight: a trail of bloodied footprints leading into the dense woods, the territory of the Wolf Man. The game was afoot. The legend was real. And Jake was right in the middle of it. The small town of Wolfe County, with its innocent streets and age-old tales, was now the backdrop for a terrifying showdown. The blood on Maple Street was just the beginning. The real horror was yet to unfold. Chapter 2. Whispers in the dark. The sun rose slowly over Wolfe County, bathing it in a pale, hesitant light. The gruesome scene on Maple Street from the night before had been replaced by a cloak of eerie silence. The only remnants were the yellow crime scene tape flapping lazily in the morning breeze and the memories that now haunted its residents. As Jake pulled into the local diner, he noticed the atmosphere had changed. The place was abuzz with whispers, hushed voices discussing the events of the previous night. As he walked in, the conversations came to an abrupt halt, eyes darting nervously in his direction. The townsfolk seemed wary, like trapped animals sensing a predator. He took a seat at the bar, nodding to the waitress. "Coffee, black," he ordered, trying to shake off the unease that clung to him. Across the room, an old man, gnarled hands wrapped around a coffee mug, beckoned him over. "You're the new state trooper, right?" "Jake," he rasped. Jake nodded. "That's right." The old man looked around and leaned in closer. "I've seen it, you know. The Wolf Man. Not just a legend. It's real, and it's got a taste for blood." Jake felt a chill despite the warmth of the diner. "Tell me what you know," he urged, his marine instincts taking over. The man hesitated, then whispered, "Late 70s, I was out hunting in the hills. Came across a cave. Inside, I found remains. Not just animals, mind you. Human remains. The deeper I went, the worse it got." Jake felt his heart race. "Did you see it? The creature?" The man shuddered. "I heard it. A deep growl, echoing through the cave. I never ran so fast in my life. But when I turned to look, I saw its eyes, glowing in the dark. That's when I knew the stories were true." Jake took a moment to process this. "Why didn't you report it?" The man took a shaky sip from his mug. "Who would believe an old coot like me? Plus, some things are best left alone. But now it's come down from the hills. And it's hungry." As Jake pondered this revelation, his radio crackled to life. "State Trooper Jake, please report to Cedar Ridge." Another incident. His heart sank. Another victim? Was this the work of the Wolf Man again? As Jake drove up to Cedar Ridge, he saw a scene all too familiar. The flashing blue and red lights, the huddled masses of terrified townsfolk, the whisper of fear in the air. This time, however, there was no body. Instead, there was a message. Scrawled in what looked like blood on the side of a barn were the words, "Leave or die." Jake felt a mix of anger and trepidation. Was this a warning from the creature? A challenge? Either way, he knew he had to get to the bottom of this. Searching for clues, Jake found a trail leading into the woods. Boot prints mixed with what looked like large canine tracks. They led to a clearing, and in the center stood an old, decrepit shack. The door was slightly ajar, and as Jake approached, he heard a faint whimpering. Inside, tied to a rickety chair, was a young woman, pale and terrified. Gagged, her eyes pleaded for help. As Jake rushed to free her, she managed to whisper, "It took me. Wanted me to see. To spread the message." Jake's heart raced. "Did you see the Wolf Man?" She nodded weakly. "It's not alone," she whispered, her voice trembling. "There's more than one." The revelation hit Jake like a freight train. The thought of a single creature was horrifying enough, but multiple? The stakes had just been raised. After ensuring the woman was safely returned to her family, Jake returned to the scene. The tracks, the shack, the message, it all pointed to a larger, more sinister plot. The Wolfman was not just a lone creature but part of a pack. Determined to unravel this mystery, Jake decided to seek out the cave the old man at the diner had mentioned. Armed with his training, a flashlight, and a resolve of steel, he ventured deep into the hills of Wolfe County. The cave's entrance was hidden, obscured by overgrown foliage. As Jake delved deeper, the air grew colder, the oppressive darkness pressing in on him. Soon, the only sound was his own breathing and the soft drip of water from the cave walls. Suddenly, a noise stopped him in his tracks. A low growl, echoing through the depths of the cave. And then, from the shadows, a pair of glowing eyes stared back at him. Jake's heart pounded in his chest. He was no longer the hunter. He was the hunted. And as the growls grew louder, joined by others, Jake realized the full extent of the horror that lurked in Wolfe County. The legends were true, but they were only the beginning. The darkness of the cave seemed to close in around him, as did the menacing presence of the Wolfmen. Escape seemed impossible. But Jake wasn't one to give up without a fight. Drawing on his training, he prepared to face the creatures head-on. And as the first Wolfman stepped into the dim light of his flashlight, Jake knew that the battle for Wolfe County had only just begun. Chapter 3. The Lair of Beasts. As the first Wolfman lunged from the shadows, the muted silver of Jake's flashlight reflected off its matted fur and sharp claws. It was a monstrous sight, a blend of man and beast, a perversion of nature that stood as a testament to the horrors hidden in these Appalachian depths. But Jake was not one to be paralyzed by fear. His marine training kicked in, and in one fluid motion, he sidestepped the lunge, using the creature's momentum against it. It crashed into the cave wall with a guttural yelp. However, before Jake could regroup, a second Wolfman lunged at him. He barely managed to deflect the creature's attack with a swift kick, but the impact sent a sharp pain up his leg. He realized he was outmatched and outnumbered. Jake had to think fast. The cave's echo served as a beacon. He could hear the sounds of more of these creatures approaching. In the dimness, he saw a narrow pathway, perhaps a secondary tunnel. Without a second thought, he bolted, leaving the dazed creatures behind, but he knew it wouldn't be for long. The tunnel twisted and turned, and as he ran, the walls seemed to press in, cold and unyielding. The chilling howls of the Wolfmen echoed behind him, their pursuit relentless. Just when his lungs began to burn and hope seemed to fade, Jake stumbled upon a larger chamber. Stalactites hung from the ceiling like nature's daggers, and in the center was an underground stream, its waters glowing faintly with phosphorescence. But what caught Jake's attention was not the beauty of this underground wonder. It was the horrors that it held. Around the chamber were remains, skeletal and fresh, animal and unmistakably human. This was their lair, their feeding ground. Horrified, Jake realized he wasn't just dealing with mere creatures. These were intelligent beings, capable of not just hunting, but also of setting traps and communicating. The discarded belongings of their victims, from torn clothes to rusted weapons, littered the chamber. Among the discarded items, Jake noticed a journal, its pages yellowed with age. Seizing the opportunity, he grabbed it and swiftly found a place to hide behind a large rock formation, hoping the creatures would lose his scent near the stream. As he waited, with bated breath, he quickly flipped through the journal. It belonged to a local from the late 70s named Harold Greer. Entries spoke of Harold's fascination with local legends and his determination to prove the existence of the Wolfmen. But as the entries progressed, they became more frantic, speaking of being hunted, of discovering this very cave, and of a chilling revelation. The Wolfmen were once humans, cursed by an old witch of the Appalachians after a betrayal. The last entry was the most haunting. They're closing in. If anyone finds this, know the truth. The Wolfmen can be turned back, but the ritual, it requires. Quote. The entry ended abruptly. Suddenly, a shadow loomed over Jake, a growl reverberating through the chamber. He was discovered. But instead of attacking, the creature, the very one that had first lunged at him, merely stared, its eyes reflecting a depth of intelligence and, perhaps, a hint of sadness. It tilted its head, making a series of soft, mournful howls. From the tunnels, the other Wolfmen began to emerge, joining the chorus. The sound was hauntingly beautiful, filling the cave with an eerie melody that spoke of ancient sorrows and a yearning for redemption. Jake, clutching the journal, took a step forward. I know what you once were, he whispered, his voice echoing in the chamber. And maybe, just maybe, I can help. The creatures paused, their glowing eyes fixed on him. For a brief moment, man and monster stood in a silent communion, connected by a shared understanding. But the truce was fragile. From deeper within the cave, a more sinister growl echoed, deeper and more menacing. The Alpha, the leader of the Wolfmen, was coming. Jake knew he had to leave, but now he had a lead, the journal. He had to find out more about the ritual and the old witch. But first, he had to survive. Using a flare from his utility belt, Jake lit up the cave, the bright light temporarily blinding the creatures. Using this to his advantage, he made his escape, vowing to return. As he emerged from the cave's entrance, the weight of his discovery pressed down on him. The Wolfmen were not just mindless beasts, they were victims of a curse. And perhaps, just perhaps, they could be saved. He glanced at the journal in his hand, the key to unlocking the mystery. Jake knew his mission was no longer just about survival. It was about redemption. The story of the Wolfmen had just begun. Chapter 4. Echoes from the past outside the cave. The chill of the night air raked against Jake's sweat-drenched skin. The pungent aroma of pine and the distant hooting of an owl felt surreal after what he had just experienced. He realized that in his mad dash from the cave, he had left his flashlight behind. The silvery moon above was now his only guide, its cold rays filtering through the dense tree canopy. He began his trek back to town, the weight of the journal he carried equaling the burden of his newfound mission. As he walked, the journal's leather binding seemed to hum in his hand, like a heart emitting a pulse, beckoning him to uncover its secrets. At a safe distance from the cave, Jake finally stopped to catch his breath. He flipped the journal open to where he left off. The next few pages were smeared, making the text difficult to read, but a folded map fell out from between the pages. The map showed the town and the surrounding forest. Scribbled notes and coordinates indicated places Harold had visited. One spot was circled repeatedly, an old chapel, abandoned for years, on the outskirts of Wolfe County. Jake realized this was his next destination. Before heading there, he needed to prepare. He had to gather supplies and perhaps even recruit help. Jake remembered tales of old townsfolk who spoke about the Wolfmen, folks dismissed as superstitious. Maybe they knew more. Reaching the outskirts of town, the first light of dawn painted the horizon in shades of pink and gold. The town was still asleep, its streets devoid of the usual hustle and bustle. Jake's first stop was the local library. The building, a relic from the 1800s with its Gothic spires and ancient oak doors, seemed to stare back at him, as if guarding secrets of its own. Jake pushed the door open, and a musty, bookish aroma greeted him. Inside, Ms. Marjorie, the elderly librarian with a reputation for knowing everything about the town, was already at her desk. Her gray eyes, sharp as ever, sized up Jake instantly. Early morning research, trooper? Or did you finally decide to check out one of our romance novels? She quipped, a playful smile tugging at her lips. Jake couldn't help but chuckle. Neither, Ms. Marjorie. I need to dig up information on an old chapel. And maybe something about an old witch. Her playful demeanor changed instantly. Her eyes darkened, and she motioned for him to follow. Leading him to a secluded section of the library, she pulled out an ancient-looking book titled Wolfe County, Echoes from the Past. You tread on dangerous ground, trooper. The chapel you seek has been abandoned for a reason, she whispered, her fingers tracing over the embossed cover of the book. Jake explained his encounter in the cave and showed her the journal. Ms. Marjorie's eyes widened as she recognized Harold's name. I knew Harold. He was obsessed with the Wolfmen legend, but we all thought it was mere fancy. Until he disappeared, that is. As they flipped through the book, they stumbled upon tales of the chapel being the site of ancient rituals, of sacrifices to appease supernatural entities, and of a witch named Alara, who was said to possess the power to bend man and beast to her will. The chapel was her domain, Ms. Marjorie murmured, her voice quivering. It said that she cursed those who betrayed her, turning them into the Wolfmen. Jake felt a shiver run down his spine. Do you believe it? He asks. She looked up, her gray eyes piercing his. After living in this town for 8 decades, I've learned that truth is often stranger than fiction. But be warned, trooper. Seeking the chapel might unveil horrors beyond comprehension. Jake nodded, determination stealing his features. I need to go there. And I need your help. Ms. Marjorie hesitated for a moment, then sighed. All right, but first, we gather a team. There are still a few old-timers in town who know about these legends and might help. As the day progressed, Jake, with Ms. Marjorie's assistance, assembled a small group comprising of 2 other town locals, Bill, a rugged hunter with in-depth knowledge of the forests, and Clara, a descendant of the town's founders with alleged psychic abilities. Together, armed with the map, Harold's journal, and a shared determination, the team prepared to venture to the old chapel, unaware of the darkness that awaited them. As night fell, the silhouette of the chapel emerged in the distance, its dilapidated spires reaching out to the heavens like skeletal fingers. As they approached, a low, mournful howl echoed from the woods, a grim reminder of the creatures that lurked in the shadows. Their journey to unravel the curse of the Wolfmen had only just begun. Chapter 5. The Witch's Sanctuary. The old chapel loomed ahead, an ancient sentinel framed by moonlight. Its once grand facade was now pocked with age and erosion, yet it still exuded an aura of forbidding authority. The windows, though broken and covered in grime, seemed like unblinking eyes, watching, waiting. Jake, Bill, Clara, and Ms. Marjorie approached cautiously, the gravel underfoot crunching loudly in the otherwise silent night. A gust of wind, cold and biting, carried with it the distant howl of wolves, or perhaps something more sinister. Bill, with a furrowed brow, took the lead. I've never been this close to the chapel before, he whispered, a hint of awe in his voice. Locals say the place is cursed. That those who enter never come back out. Clara, the youngest of the group, clutched a pendant around her neck, her lips moving in a silent prayer. The pendant, an heirloom passed down through generations, was said to possess protective powers. They reached the entrance, a massive oak door, studded with rusted iron. Carvings of wolves, mid-howl, adorned its edges. Jake stepped forward, placing a hand on the door. It was surprisingly warm to the touch and, with a slow creak, swung open. Inside, the chapel was grander than its exterior suggested. Moonlight streamed through the shattered windows, illuminating faded frescoes that depicted tales of man, beast, and the delicate line between. At the altar stood a statue of a woman, elegant yet haunting, her eyes made of shimmering obsidian. "That's Alara," Ms. Marjorie whispered. "The witch who's said to have ruled over Wolfe County. She's the key to all of this." Jake, driven by a newfound determination, approached the altar. There, he found another journal, older and more worn than Harold's. Picking it up, the pages fell open to an entry that was circled in frantic red ink. To control the beasts, one must first control their heart. Only then can the curse be undone. As he read, the ground beneath them began to tremble. The statue of Alara seemed to come alive, its obsidian eyes glinting with malevolent intent. Shadows converged around the altar, forming ghostly apparitions of wolves. Bill readied his hunting knife while Clara clutched her pendant, her face pale but defiant. Ms. Marjorie, ever the historian, searched the chapel for any sign or symbol that could offer a clue. Suddenly, Clara began to chant in a tongue none of them recognized. The pendant around her neck glowed a bright azure. One by one, the shadowy wolves started to dissipate, their howls of rage echoing through the chapel. As the last shadow vanished, the tremors ceased, and the statue returned to its inert state. The group, panting and on edge, turned to Clara, awestruck. "It's an old protection spell," she explained, her voice trembling. "My ancestors used it to ward off dark forces. I never thought it'd actually work." Bill, his rough exterior betraying a hint of emotion, clapped Clara on the back. "Good thing you're with us, kid." With the immediate danger past, the group delved deeper into Alara's journal. It spoke of a heartstone, a crystal of immense power that was said to control the wolf men. But its location was shrouded in riddles and cryptic clues. "We need to find that heartstone," Jake declared, his marine training evident in his commanding tone. "It's the key to ending this." As the hours passed and dawn approached, the group devised a plan. Using the clues from the journal, they'd search the forests of Wolfe County for the heartstone. But they'd have to move fast. The wolf men were growing bolder, and time was running out. Just as the first rays of sunlight pierced the chapel's windows, another howl, louder and closer than before, echoed through the air. The hunt had truly begun. Chapter 6. Heart of the Forest. The heart of Wolfe County's forests had a reputation of its own. Here, trees older than any living memory stretched toward the sky, their leaves whispering secrets of times long gone. Shadows felt darker, the silence deeper, punctuated only by the eerie howl that Jake and his group had grown too familiar with. As dawn's light began to penetrate the dense canopy, they started their journey into the forest's interior. Guided by the cryptic clues from Alara's journal, they had only a general direction to pursue. The heartstone, if it existed, was hidden well. Jake, with his military precision, had them move in a V formation, with Clara and Ms. Marjorie at the center. Bill, his hunting knife at the ready, took the lead, his instincts as a tracker proving invaluable. The forest seemed alive, watching their every move. Birds, usually a constant source of background chirping, were ominously silent. The stillness felt unnatural, as though the very woods were holding their breath in anticipation. By mid-morning, they reached a clearing dominated by a massive stone monolith, adorned with ancient symbols and carvings. Wolves, intertwined with images of a full moon and shadowy figures, covered its surface. "Looks like we're on the right track," said Ms. Marjorie, examining the stone with a historian's reverence. While the others took a brief respite, Clara approached the monolith, her pendant glowing ever so slightly. She reached out and touched it, her fingers tracing the carved wolves. The monolith vibrated subtly, emitting a hum that resonated in the very air. A shiver ran down Jake's spine. "What did you do?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. Clara looked entranced. "It's guiding us," she whispered. Following Clara's lead, the group ventured further into the forest. The monoliths hummed their guiding beacon. They moved through ancient groves and crossed babbling streams, each step taking them deeper into the realm of legends. Hours turned into an indistinct blur. Then, as evening approached, they stumbled upon an overgrown ruin, the remnants of what seemed to be a temple, hidden deep within the forest. At the heart of the ruins was a pedestal, and on it, cradled by intertwining vines, lay a shimmering crystal, the Heartstone. Its beauty was undeniable, pulsating with a light that seemed both comforting and menacing. Jake approached cautiously. "This is it. The key to stopping the Wolfmen," he said, determination evident in his voice. But Bill, usually unflappable, looked uneasy. "It's never that easy," he murmured, surveying their surroundings with a wary eye. Clara, drawn by the allure of the Heartstone, slowly extended her hand, her pendant now glowing fiercely. But just as her fingers were about to touch the crystal, a guttural roar echoed through the ruins. From the shadows, the Wolfmen emerged. Larger, fiercer, and more numerous than before, their eyes locked onto the group with a predatory intent. Jake's marine instincts kicked in. "Form a circle, back to back," he barked. Ms. Marjorie, paralyzed by fear, was snapped into action by Clara, who held her close, chanting an incantation. Bill, knife at the ready, lunged at the closest Wolfman, a clash of beast and man that seemed to defy reality. But the numbers were overwhelming. Just as things looked bleak, the Heartstone began to glow even brighter, its luminescence casting the ruins in an ethereal light. Clara, with newfound resolve, began to chant louder, her voice harmonizing with the hum of the Heartstone. A forceful wave of energy radiated from her, causing the Wolfmen to falter. Jake seized the opportunity. "Get to the Heartstone," he yelled. Battling through the horde, he reached the pedestal, grabbing the crystal. The Wolfmen howled in unison, a cacophony of rage and pain. As Jake held the Heartstone aloft, a blinding light enveloped the ruins. When it subsided, the Wolfmen were gone, leaving the group battered but alive. The weight of their ordeal evident on their faces, they regrouped. The Heartstone, while a potent weapon, was also a target. The Wolfmen would be back, and in greater numbers. "We need a plan," said Jake, his voice heavy with the weight of leadership. This is just the beginning. Chapter 7. Whispers of the past. The ruins, a once sacred place hidden deep within the forest, now resonated with echoes of their recent battle. The sun had long set, and the moon, almost full, bathed the temple in its silvery glow. The Heartstone, its brilliance diminished, now rested securely within Jake's backpack. But its mere presence seemed to stir the very air around them, charged with potential and power. As the group settled, taking a brief moment to tend to their wounds and gather their thoughts, Ms. Marjorie, her historian's curiosity undeterred by the night's events, started exploring the temple's intricacies. "There's more to this place," she murmured, her fingers gently grazing the moss-covered walls, revealing ancient inscriptions. Bill, though vigilant and constantly scanning the perimeter, found himself drawn to her discovery. "What does it say?" he asked, genuine curiosity underlying his gruff exterior. Marjorie's eyes flitted across the carvings, her lips moving silently as she translated the age-old dialect. "It's a history," she finally said. "A recounting of the first Wolfman, and a prophecy." Clara, drawn by the revelation, approached the wall, her pendant subtly pulsing. "Tell us." Clearing her throat, Marjorie began, Long ago, when the moon and earth were young, a man, driven by ambition and darkness, sought power beyond measure. He made a pact with the spirits of the forest, but such power came at a price. By day, he remained a man, but by night, under the full moon, he became a beast, the first of the wolf men. Jake, listening intently, interjected, "What about the prophecy?" Marjorie hesitated, her fingers tracing the symbols as she continued, "When the heart of the forest awakens, a warrior from distant lands will come, bearing the mark of the protector. Only he can wield the heartstone, bringing an end to the beast's reign or plunging the world into eternal night." There was a charged silence. Clara turned to Jake, realization dawning. "Jake. The mark of the protector. Semper Fi, always faithful. It's you." Jake looked taken aback, the weight of the revelation evident in his eyes. "This is a lot to take in." Bill, ever the pragmatist, broke the tension. "Whether it's destiny or just bad luck, we've got a job to do. This place won't be safe come dawn." They decided to set up a temporary camp in the ruins. The Heartstone's energy seemed to act as a deterrent, at least for now. Taking shifts to keep watch, the group tried to find a few moments of rest in an increasingly restless world. During Jake's watch, as the world lay enveloped in the moon's embrace, he felt a subtle tug. Following the sensation, he found himself at the temple's center, where the Heartstone once lay. Kneeling, he gently placed the stone back on its pedestal. It pulsed, emitting a soft, melodious hum. Entranced, Jake found himself drifting into a dreamlike state. Visions filled his mind, fragmented memories of the first Wolfman, his transformation, and his reign of terror. He saw generations of protectors, each trying and failing to end the curse. And then he saw himself, standing at a crossroads, the Heartstone in one hand and the other outstretched toward a shadowy figure. Awakening with a start, Jake found Clara beside him, her concerned gaze fixed on his face. "You were elsewhere," she said gently. "I saw memories, I think," Jake replied, still reeling from the vividness of the vision. "It's like the Heartstone was showing me the past, and maybe even our future." They spent the remaining hours of the night in deep conversation, piecing together the puzzle laid out before them. Their bond deepened, strengthened by shared purpose and the weight of impending destiny. As dawn's first light painted the sky, the group, now with a clearer understanding of their mission, decided to head back to Wolfe County. Their next step was clear. They needed to uncover the truth behind the original pact made by the first Wolfman and find a way to break it. As they left the temple's sanctuary, the whispers of the past echoed in their ears, a constant reminder of the legacy they were now a part of and the battle that lay ahead. Chapter 8. Bloodlines. The return journey to Wolfe County was not without its perils. As the group ventured deeper into inhabited territories, there was a palpable tension in the air, as if the very land was alive with anticipation. The woods, which once held the song of nature, were eerily silent. As they approached the town's outskirts, they noticed an alarming sight: makeshift barricades erected around homes, and some even bore marks of what seemed to be vicious animal attacks. Evidence of the Wolfman's terror was everywhere. Jake, with an unspoken understanding between him and Clara, led the group to his grandfather's old residence, a slightly dilapidated house that stood apart from the others, surrounded by dense woods. His grandfather, a local historian and folklore enthusiast, had left Jake with memories of tales that suddenly felt all too real. Inside, the house was filled with artifacts and books, a treasure trove of local history. "We should find more about the original pact here," Jake murmured, navigating through the dusty tomes and ancient relics. While Marjorie and Clara dived into research, Bill stood guard, ever vigilant. "We're being watched," he whispered after a while, his seasoned senses detecting unseen threats. Jake nodded, knowing the importance of their mission. We need to find answers quickly. Hours seemed to pass like minutes, with only the flickering candles providing a gentle glow against the gathering darkness outside. Clara, her fingers smudged with ink and dust, exclaimed, "Here." A journal entry dated back to the time of the first Wolfman. "It's from a local healer, an ancestor of mine." The group gathered around as Clara read aloud. The healer wrote about a tragic love story between her and the first Wolfman, who was then just a man named Lorien. Lorien, desperate to protect their town from invaders, made the pact without realizing the consequences. The entry detailed rituals, sacrifices, and most importantly, a way to break the curse. Their hope, however, was short-lived. As Clara read out the ritual, it became clear that the price to break the curse was steep. A heartstone, a protector, and a willing sacrifice from the bloodline, Clara whispered, tears forming in her eyes. The room grew cold as the implications dawned on them. They had the heartstone, Jake was the protector, and Clara, being from the healer's bloodline, was the potential sacrifice. There was a deafening silence, punctuated by the soft howl of the wind outside. The burden of destiny weighed heavily on them, the room thick with unsaid words and raw emotions. The silence was shattered by a loud crash. The front door had been thrown open, revealing the towering silhouette of the Wolfman, bathed in moonlight, his eyes glowing with malevolent intelligence. Bill, reacting instantly, fired a shot, but it barely slowed the beast down. Marjorie, thinking quickly, threw a vial from the shelves, creating a temporary smokescreen. The group scrambled, knowing that they stood little chance in a direct confrontation. In the chaos, Jake managed to grab the heartstone, his instincts taking over. "The woods!" he shouted, leading the group away from the house and into the dense forest, hoping his knowledge of the terrain would give them an advantage. The Wolfman was relentless. Every shadow, every rustle of the leaves felt like a precursor to an attack. Yet, as they ventured deeper into the forest, an idea formed in Jake's mind. The same forest that birthed the curse could potentially be their salvation. Drawing on the connection with the heartstone, Jake felt its energy pulsating, guiding him towards an ancient clearing. The same clearing where Lorien had first transformed. Once there, Clara, seemingly understanding Jake's unspoken plan, started chanting, using her ancestral connection to draw the Wolfman into the clearing. The beast, sensing the heartstone's power, hesitated but ultimately stepped into the moonlit area. Jake, heartstone in hand, stood in the center, with Clara chanting by his side. The energy in the clearing was palpable, and as Jake began to recite the words from the journal, the Wolfman let out a bone-chilling howl, a mix of rage and pain. The very ground seemed to tremble, the heartstone glowing brighter, illuminating the night. Clara's voice, filled with determination and sorrow, resonated, merging with Jake's in a haunting harmony. As the climax of the ritual approached, Jake felt a sharp pain in his chest. The heartstone's energy, combined with the Wolfman's resistance, was too much. The final step required Clara's sacrifice, but as she stepped forward, a gunshot echoed through the clearing. Bill, having taken a vantage point, had fired a shot, embedding a silver bullet into the Wolfman. The beast, already weakened by the ritual, stumbled, letting out a mournful cry. Seizing the opportunity, Clara, with tears streaming down her face, completed the ritual. A blinding light enveloped the clearing, and when it dissipated, where the Wolfman once stood, now lay a man, disoriented and weak. The heartstone, its energy spent, turned into dust, carried away by the wind. Clara, exhausted, collapsed into Jake's arms, the weight of her lineage's history and the night's events overwhelming her. As dawn approached, the group, their mission complete yet at great personal cost, looked towards a future filled with uncertainty. The curse was broken, but the scars, both seen and unseen, would remain. The tale of Wolfe County, of love, sacrifice, and destiny, would be told for generations, a reminder of the thin line between man and beast, and the lengths one would go to for redemption. Chapter 9. Echoes from the abyss. The sun's early morning light streamed through the trees, casting a gentle glow on the clearing. The serene ambiance belied the night's chilling events. At the center of the clearing lay the man who was once the fearsome wolfman, now broken and disoriented. Marjorie approached cautiously. Her scientific mind, always yearning for answers, was desperate to understand the transformation and the curse's aftermath. The man stirred, his eyes reflecting the torment of countless decades. "It's okay," Marjorie whispered, her hand reaching out to him. "You're safe now." Where am I?" he croaked, his voice filled with confusion. "You're in Wolfe County," Marjorie replied gently. "You were the wolf man, but you've been freed." Clara, regaining her strength, joined Marjorie. She too wanted answers, and perhaps a connection to her ancestral past. "Do you remember anything?" The man's eyes flickered. "Lorien," he whispered. "My name was Lorien." Jake and Bill watched from a distance, their thoughts heavy with the weight of recent events. Bill, ever the protector, was still on guard, his senses ever alert for danger. "We did it," Clara murmured. "But at what cost?" Jake nodded silently, the reality of their choices sinking in. "We need to find a way to help Lorien. He's been lost for so long. We owe him that much." Meanwhile, Lorien, still weak, began to share fragments of his memories with Marjorie and Clara. Tales of love and sacrifice, of the burdens of the curse, and the blurred lines between man and beast. The pact he made was to protect his love and the town from invaders. It was a pact born out of desperation, and he paid the price for it. Clara, understanding the depths of his pain, comforted Lorien. She felt a strange kinship, their fates interwoven through time and blood. But as the day wore on, a new realization dawned on them. The curse, while broken for Lorien, may not have been entirely eradicated. Whispers spread of strange sightings and ominous howls from different parts of Wolfe County. A dread settled over the group. Had they truly broken the curse, or merely transferred it? As evening approached, they decided to split up. Marjorie, with her scientific background, set out to gather samples and research more about the Heartstone's properties. Clara chose to stay with Lorien, hoping to restore his lost memories and help him come to terms with his transformed life. Jake and Bill, warriors at heart, decided to investigate the mysterious sightings. The setting sun painted the skies in hues of orange and purple. Jake and Bill navigated through the woods, with Bill's combat-honed senses leading the way. They arrived at a secluded area, where the reports of the strange sightings were most frequent. Here, the atmosphere was different. An unnerving chill gripped the air, and an overpowering sense of dread loomed. The eerie silence was shattered by a blood-curdling howl, sending shivers down their spines. Before they could react, they were ambushed by a creature, not the wolfman they had known, but something different, more feral, devoid of any human semblance. The beast lunged at Jake, but Bill, ever ready, tackled it to the ground. As they grappled with the creature, Jake noticed more eyes glowing in the dark, watching them intently. They were surrounded. Back at the clearing, Lorien's memories flooded back. He recalled an old ritual, a forgotten chant passed down through his lineage, which could temporarily subdue the beasts. With Clara's help, they began the incantation, hoping to reach Jake and Bill in time. As the horde closed in, the atmosphere suddenly shifted. The creatures, driven by the chant's power, halted in their tracks, their aggressive stance replaced by confusion. Seizing the moment, Jake and Bill made a tactical retreat, narrowly escaping the clutches of the transformed beings. Reuniting at the clearing, the group shared their findings. The curse, it seemed, had splintered, affecting others in Wolfe County. They faced a new challenge: to save the town from the curse's echoes. Their journey had taken a new twist, adding layers of complexity to their mission. The weight of their choices, the lines between right and wrong, and the ripples of their actions would challenge their resolve in the chapters to come. Wolfe County, once a serene town, had become ground zero for a supernatural battle, its fate hanging in the balance. The legacy of the Wolfman, while seemingly subdued, had only just begun to unfold. Chapter 10. Dark Revelations. Wolfe County was no stranger to legends and myths, but none were as tantalizingly terrifying as the legacy of the Wolfman. The town, once a hub of life and laughter, now felt like a haunting relic of the past. And as the group delved deeper into the origins of the curse, they found themselves ensnared in a web of intrigue that spanned generations. The town library, with its dusty shelves and musty tomes, became their sanctuary. Marjorie, who had already been researching the Heartstone, had a theory. Every legend, she began, poring over an ancient manuscript, is rooted in truth. The curse is ancient, older than Wolfe County itself. It may have started with Lorien, but it's evident that its origins are far more sinister. Lorien, who had been quiet, now found his voice. I remember tales from my childhood of a dark sorceress who resided in the depths of the forest. She was said to wield powers beyond comprehension, and it's believed she's the one who introduced the curse to our lands. Clara looked thoughtful. If we're to combat this, we need to understand the sorceress and the real nature of the curse. Maybe there's a way to reverse it. Jake, who had been listening intently, interjected, I've heard whispers of an old witch in the woods, a recluse who knows tales and secrets of the old world. Some say she's just a story, but there might be truth to it. Bill, always practical, said, it's worth a shot. But we need to be cautious. If she's tied to the curse, she won't take kindly to our intrusion. The team agreed, and a plan was formed. They'd venture into the heart of the woods the following night, guided by tales and whispers of the elusive witch's whereabouts. As evening descended upon Wolfe County, an oppressive air of foreboding gripped the land. The forest, bathed in moonlight, seemed almost alive, with shadows that danced and whispered secrets of the ancient past. Guided by the scant information they had, they journeyed deeper into the woods. Hours seemed like minutes, and minutes like seconds. The forest had a disorienting effect, and just when they felt they'd lost their way, a faint light appeared in the distance. As they approached, the sight that met their eyes was eerily mesmerizing. A small cottage, illuminated by hundreds of candles, stood at a clearing. An old woman, her back turned, was muttering incantations over a cauldron that bubbled with an otherworldly glow. Marjorie, taking the lead, stepped forward. Excuse me, she began, her voice quivering with a mix of fear and curiosity. We seek knowledge about the Wolfman's curse. The old woman turned, her eyes piercing and wise, with an agelessness that defied comprehension. Seeking answers, are you? She croaked. Be warned, some truths are best left buried. Clara, drawing from her ancestral connection, pleaded, please, we only want to free our town from this torment. The witch, sensing the earnestness in Clara's voice, relented. Very well, she began, but first, a test. A series of challenges were presented, each designed to test their mettle, wisdom, and heart. After what felt like hours, they finally earned the witch's trust. She spoke of the original curse, of a love scorned, and of a pact with the dark forces that went awry. The curse, it seemed, was more a punishment than a protection, a manifestation of the sorceress's rage against a lover who betrayed her. The curse can be broken, she said, but it requires a sacrifice. A heartstone, combined with the blood of one who bears the curse. The weight of her words hung heavily in the air. Lorien, realizing the implication, stepped forward. "I am ready," he said, determination evident in his eyes. But Clara intervened. "There has to be another way. We can't let history repeat itself." The witch, seeing the resolve in the group, whispered, "Very well, there is one other way. Deep within this forest lies the tomb of the sorceress. If you can convince her spirit to lift the curse, you may save your town. But be warned, the path is fraught with danger." And with those words, the next phase of their journey began. The stakes were higher, the challenges more daunting, but their resolve was unyielding. The legacy of the Wolfman, intertwined with the tales of a scorned sorceress, had set them on a path from which there was no turning back. We hope you have enjoyed our storytelling offering tonight. Please be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications to be alerted of future weekly additions to our collections. Paranormal Untold Stories.